Hi, I'm Kelly Sadler, and this is Politically Unstable with the Washington Times. Today, I'm joined by DeAngelis, a school choice advocate and senior fellow at the American Culture Project, to talk school choice and our public education system. And this was a big week because lawmakers on the Hill, Representative Harris and Senator Blackburn, introduced legislation to revoke the National Education Association's federal charter. Now, Corey, I didn't even know these guys had a federal charter. Why are they getting federal monies to the nation's largest teachers union?
It's insane. It's the only union in the country that has this special privileged status. They have this federal charter, they have the backing of Congress, and they've had it for over 100 years now. It started in 1906, so other unions should be upset about this. Why is this one union getting, we're picking winners and losers here, and there's only one. The NEA is winning, the kids are losing, parents are losing, the other unions are losing. They don't get this special status. So I'm thankful that these congressmen, Republicans in Congress, have introduced this bill to revoke that special status, to get rid of their federal charter. And it's a fantastic timing because earlier this month, the NEA, the largest teachers union in the country, had their annual convention, and I leaked to the public some of their resolutions. They used to be public, they used to post them online, until in 2019, they failed to pass a resolution to rededicate themselves to being about student learning. Think about that. The educators union defeated a resolution to being about educating children. But this year, they had all these wacky resolutions. They were so political. None of them had anything to do with education.
Walk us through a few of these.
Yeah,
I wrote about a few of them in a column that I did last week, but they're too good to be true. I mean, they're anti-Trump, anti-republicanism, totally political, nothing to do with education. But
they have Trump derangement syndrome, and it's on full display. Just real quick, at that annual convention, they elevated one person out of all the teachers in this country, out of millions of teachers, they elevated one person as their so-called Teacher of the Year. Her name is Ashley Crossan, and what she said, she's from Pennsylvania, she let the mask slip during her annual convention speech, where she said that her job, teaching of all things, is deeply political and always had been. That's free advertising for school choice and homeschooling if I've ever seen it. But some of these resolutions, I mean, one of them, they misspelled the word fascism. I mean, a union supposedly representing educators, they can't even spell.
But they green-lighted it to use, to talk about Donald Trump, President Trump, that his policies are all fascist. Exactly.
In their resolution to label Trump, the duly elected president of the United States, as a fascist, they misspelled the word. You just can't make it up. It's beyond parody. They passed another one to basically call any move to abolish the Department of Education racist. I mean, everything I don't like is either racist or fascist. It is devoid of any logic whatsoever. Basically, I mean, if anything, it's the status quo that is failing minority kids all across the country. In Chicago, you have 50 public schools in Chicago with not a single kid proficient in math or reading, and they spend so much money. It's $30,000 a kid every single year, which is like twice the average private school tuition.
Well, we have the same problem here in Baltimore, where there's failing report cards left and right. Instead of, trying to get the kids to meet standards, they're lowering the standards.
40% of Baltimore high schools with not a single kid proficient in math. These are failure factories. They're not public schools, and it's because the unions have been so involved at injecting their politics in the classroom. One more resolution that they passed, they had all these anti-immigration enforcement resolutions, obviously. They also called Trump an authoritarian in a separate one. They dedicated over $200,000 in teachers' union dues to get around the recent Supreme Court decision, Mahmoud v. Taylor out of Maryland, of all places, where they basically said in the Supreme Court that now parents can opt their children out of gender ideology if it's against their deeply held religious beliefs. And the teachers union, what did they, instead of saying, okay, let's support parents, no, they're trying to subvert the will of parents and spending a lot of money to get around that Supreme Court
case. That case came out of Montgomery County, close here to Washington, D.C., where children in kindergarten through 6th grade were being read sexually explicit books that these parents said, okay, if you want to do it, do it, but I want to be able to opt my child out. And this public school moved to say, no, there's no opt-out here.
They used to have an opt-out too,
Yes.
and then I guess they got lobbied by the LGBTQ crowd or something, and all of a sudden, no, we're going to force you to have your children around this material.
But rather than comply, the teachers union is looking for a way to educate their teachers on how to subvert the will of the parents.
Yes, and one last thing on why we need to revoke that federal charter. One, it's a special status nobody has, but two, 99% of their political contributions every single year go to Democrat campaign coffers. It's a money laundering operation, wash, rinse, repeat. It ought to be illegal. It's a one-sided political organization, not an education organization. And so they've strayed so far from their original purpose of supposedly being about, I don't know, teaching kids how to read. They don't do that anymore, and that's why we have only a quarter of kids in America, according to the nation's report card, are proficient in math. It is abysmal. We spend more than any other country on the planet.
Talk to me about that, and talk to our readers and listeners about that, because a lot of people say, and Democrats especially say, well, if there's a problem, we just need more funding. We need to, support our teachers. We need to have them have higher pay. This is a funding problem, not a teacher problem.
We should support teachers, but throwing more money at the problem is not the way to do it. And if you look at the proof is in the pudding, since 1970, we've increased per student spending in America by 170% in real terms after adjusting for inflation, but the teacher salaries over the same period, flat. They've only increased by 3%. The money's going towards administrative bloat. It's not making its way into the classroom. That hurts kids and parents, but it also hurts the teachers too. The teachers should also be saying, the NEA is not representing my values, especially if you're a conservative teacher, when all their money goes to Democrats, when they're just unhinged at their annual convention saying that they are deeply political. There's a lot of great teachers in America who don't want to be involved in politics, who do want to stick to the original mission. So they should also opt out of paying union dues. You can do that now, teachers, in any state. After the Janus decision from 2018, they can no longer compel you to pay union dues as a condition of employment. So you can pull your funding, you can get liability insurance from the Association of American Educators, a private organization, and so you can still have protection if you still need that, but for all the other frivolous stuff and politics that you don't agree with, you don't have to fund that. So the NEA is just, it's become such a national embarrassment, and it's an international embarrassment at this point.
Well, the NEA also, what broke last week coming out of their annual convention is that they've cut ties with the Anti-Defamation League. A league that was founded to combat anti-Semitism. We have an upsurgence of anti-Semitism on college campuses as well as schools, but they'll brace arms with the LGBTQ plus causes, but they want to put an arm's distance between themselves and educating kids on the Holocaust and the horrors that the Jewish population has been through. It's insane that their priorities
are all out of whack, and they're just choosing the wrong battles to pick. I mean, why not just focus on math, reading, and writing and call it a day? Why do you have to put your finger in all these other pots and to take a side on every single political issue? They're putting their thumb on the scale. They're not saying, we should only support or we shouldn't be involved. They passed resolutions to support kind of Arab supporting resolutions, but then they were against the ADL resolution. And I also leaked on X earlier this month from their annual convention from last year. They had one of their attendees say on a hidden camera investigation by Accuracy in Media that the NEA is all about diversity, equity, and inclusion unless you're Jewish. And so that went viral, and it really just meshes very well with what's happening this year, where the Jewish Affairs Caucus of the NEA, they denounced that resolution that passed of cutting ties with the ADL. And so this is just another reason, one, why we need school choice, two, why teachers should start to smell the coffee and say, this has just gone too far, and I'm going to pull my funding from that union and put it elsewhere. So you can defund the NEA from a couple ways, from the bottom up, voting with your feet as parents, but from the inside as well, because there are a lot of teachers who are on the right side of history and who agree with the majority of parents and not with these special interests who don't represent pretty much anybody, except for Becky Pringle, the head of the NEA, who makes about $500,000 a year to just do what? Scream on stage.
And so does Randy Weingarten. And these unions, both unions, have been heavily involved in promoting the No Kings protests, anti-ICE protests, getting their members out on the streets. A lot of these have been peaceful, so-called peaceful, but we've seen what's happened in LA. But I want to move on to a Supreme Court judgment that came out this month saying that the Department of Education could cut 1,400 jobs. That under Secretary Linda McMahon, that was her aim. Of course, she got challenged on that. The Supreme Court said, no, the President of the United States has authority over the executive branch. I mean, what do you make of that? And is that a move in the right direction?
Yes, it totally is. It's an exciting time. I mean, we've been taking steps to reduce the federal influence in education for decades, and Trump was the only one to get it done. Ronald Reagan even tried to push for this at the very beginning of the inception of the department. Look, it started in 1980. And since then, we've increased spending by 108%, more than doubled in real terms. Have the outcomes gotten 108% better? No, the proof is in the pudding. And with this move to abolish the department, and this wasn't even doing that. This case didn't even have to do with like getting rid of the department. They laid off about 1,400 employees, and then there was a lower court that basically sided with the teachers unions and resorted to judicial activism to stop it. It went to the Supreme Court. We won 6-3. It should have been a unanimous decision, but we got one of those 3 liberal justices that doesn't even know what a woman is. So of course she's going to make bad decisions when it's really important. But now we can continue the process of firing these 1,400 employees. I mean, they're useless bureaucrats pushing paper thousands of miles away from their local constituents, and they don't know your child's name. They don't employ a single teacher at this department. They don't educate a single child at this department. And we already have 50 departments of education at the state level already. Why do we need another one in DC? We don't. And so the outcomes haven't gotten better. The spending has gone up. They've spent about $3 trillion at the federal level since the inception of the department. It was started as a political payoff by Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, to the teachers union. He wanted the NEA endorsement. And so their time is up. We have so much evidence showing that this department has done more harm than good. And guess what? When you get rid of it entirely, that's the result of this case is not to totally get rid of it. It's to allow Trump, the chief executive, to manage the executive branch. I mean, this is not rocket science.
And the states are in control of our children's education and the public education of them. So it's not dismantling it entirely. That would take an act of Congress. It's stripping it down and giving grants and block grants to the states so that they can deploy those assets in whatever way that they deem best for the child, much like what the president is talking about doing with FEMA, giving block grants to the states.
Well, and Kelly, you'd actually have more money for educating kids this way because you're not getting rid of the money. It doesn't just vanish, which is what happens right now with the status quo in DC. They're just 6-figure salaries to all these bureaucrats who don't really do anything. I'm serious. But Trump already talked about how the vital functions move under the Small Business Administration, like student loans, and then Head Start moving under HHS. But if you don't waste so much money on these bureaucrats, you can block grant that, and then you'll have more than you had before and not as much red tape. You'll have more local control. This is a win-win for everybody.
I want to talk about the school choice movement at the state level. We've seen a lot of progress on this. I live in Virginia. Governor Youngkin was elected largely on parental rights and parents having a say over their children's school and what they're taught after the COVID lockdowns had such an impact. What headways are we making for choice in all of the states?
We're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning. Just kidding. We're not done yet. We've gotten 17 states down with Milton Friedman's vision of universal school choice for everybody. No more picking winners and losers. Everybody, regardless of income, background, zip code, can take their child's tax dollars meant for their education to the school that works best for them. That could be the public school if you want, but if not, you can take that funding to a private charter or homeschool option. These are all red states right now, these 17 that have gone all in. Hopefully some blue states will come along at some point. The Democrats at some point need to read the tea leaves and say, I'm on the wrong side of history right now, because Democrat voters overwhelmingly support school choice. They benefit from school choice programs. They use them in large numbers. And so this really shouldn't be a partisan issue, but it gets back to the main root of the problem, which is the NEA and the other teachers unions at the national level. They're an arm of the Democrat Party. Randy and Becky Pringle, the two union bosses making $500,000 a year each, they have positions at the Democrat National Committee. And Randy just left after 23 years. She got forced out because she was too
progressive, too radical.
She was saying the Democrat Party was...
She was on David Hogg's side.
David Hogg's side, exactly. So...
But I mean, talking about how radical the teachers' union boss is, didn't the NEA just endorse Zoran Mandami, the communist, as President Trump would say, of running for mayor in New York City?
It was Randy Weingarten's union, the UFT.
Oh, okay.
She used to be president there. It's an affiliate of the American Federation of Teachers. And so you have them endorsing the socialist candidate. And we're not just saying that because we think he's a socialist. He proclaims to be a socialist and brags about it. And guess what? This guy in New York City, he went to a private school himself.
That is the hypocrisy with so many of these defenders of public education, is that they benefited from private education themselves, school choice, because their parents had enough funds to send them to a private school, which many low-income students, many minority students, don't have that option, but need, as Tim Scott said, Senator Scott, school choice is the civil rights issue of our time. And I firmly believe that. But let's talk about, there was some news coming out of Oklahoma last week. The school superintendent there, Ryan Walters, is at the forefront of this movement. And he passed some sort of I don't think it wasn't legislation, but if you're a teacher coming from New York or California and you want to teach in Oklahoma, you need to pass this basic civics lesson, because we don't want this woke ideology transferred into our schools. We want to focus on the basics, the Constitution.
Yeah, this is a good move. Ryan Walters is a superhero when it comes to state superintendents of instruction. There's a lot of them that are really bad, even the Republican ones who side with the status quo, who are just in bed with the teachers unions, and who side with the Democrat Party and then call themselves Republicans. But Ryan Walters is a true fighter for education freedom. And this is a good idea because, and it's not really the teachers' fault who are coming into Oklahoma. They're probably going to Oklahoma because they align with Oklahoma values. But in places like California, they have these mandatory trainings for all the teachers. And so it's kind of undoing that indoctrination, not just for the kids, but it's the teachers get their own flavor of indoctrination, not just from the teachers' colleges, but from their own professional development that happens in blue states. So California is notorious for this. They have these new PRISM trainings. I forget even what the acronym stands for, but it's basically to inject the teachers, not just the kids, with gender ideology as well. And so this is a great move by Ryan. They also have universal school choice in Oklahoma, and he's a huge supporter of education freedom. So look, allowing more competition in education and allowing for more flexibility for teachers, this shouldn't be viewed as parents versus educators. It should be viewed as them being on the same side against that monopoly, because the employer that doesn't have any incentive to do the right thing for kids or teachers, the district, the unions, they need some competition. They need some incentive to say, you know what, maybe we should stop thinking about ourselves. Maybe we should think about our employees and our customers, the parents and the kids.
Well, Corey DeAngelis, thank you so much for all the work that you've done in this area and for speaking with me today and educating our readers and our viewers on this topic. You're making tremendous progress. I'm seeing the tides turning and I'm very encouraged. So
thank you so much, Kelly.